The house was silent, too silent for a place that once carried the laughter of a child. In the far corner of the small alien room stood a cradle. It glowed faintly under the silver light that slipped through the window. Once, it had been full of warmth, the soft sound of breathing, the gentle movements of tiny hands. Now it was empty, empty and heavy, as if the absence itself had weight. The alien mother sat close to it every night. Her large eyes, once bright with joy, had turned dull from endless tears. Yet, no matter how much the pain pressed on her, she kept singing. Her voice was soft and low, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. It was the same song she had always sung to her child, a lullaby meant to bring peace. Now the song hung in the air like a broken promise. The neighbors had grown tired of her grief. They told their children not to wander near her home. They called her the woman who spoke to shadows. Some even said she had lost her mind. But she didn't care. They could not understand what it meant to lose something so pure, so fragile. They didn't know how the heart refused to stop hoping, even when the world insisted that hope was gone. Her people's council had told her to move on. "The child is gone," they said, their voices cold and sharp. "You must let go." But how could a mother let go? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her baby's face. Every time she woke, she half expected to hear her daughter's cry. The cradle might have been empty, but her heart was not. It was overflowing with longing, with memory, with love that would not die. Still, the nights were cruel. When she sang, she sometimes thought she heard small noises, the faintest echo of a laugh, or the rustle of fabric as if the child was turning in her sleep. But when she reached out, there was nothing. Just the cradle. Just silence. And that silence cut deeper than any blade. But one night, something changed. It began with whispers. At the market earlier that day, she had overheard villagers talking in hushed tones. They spoke of a stranger near the borders. A human. Most called him dangerous. Some said he was wandering without purpose. Others claimed he carried strange things, things that didn't belong to him. Even children. The moment she heard that word, her chest tightened. She told herself not to believe. Humans were only stories, creatures her people had learned to fear. They brought chaos, war, destruction. They were never spoken of as saviors. Yet, something in her heart stirred when she heard the rumor. A quiet voice whispered inside her. What if this human had seen her daughter? What if he knew something the others didn't? That evening, she sat by the cradle again, singing her broken lullaby. But her voice shook with new tension. She could not stop thinking about those whispers. For the first time in many nights, her song carried more than grief. It carried a question, a desperate plea, as if she was singing not only to her child, but to the universe itself. The wind outside shifted. The branches of the tall silver trees creaked and groaned. Somewhere far off, a sound echoed, footsteps. Not the light tread of her kind, but heavier, slower, uneven. Her song faltered. She turned her head, listening. The sound came again. Her pulse quickened. She rose slowly, her body tense, her hands trembling at her sides. No one visited her home, not in daylight and certainly not in the middle of the night. For a moment, she wondered if grief had finally broken her completely. But the sound grew louder. Someone or something was there. She walked to the door, her breath shallow. The cradle glowed faintly behind her, as if urging her not to leave it alone. She reached for the door handle with shaking fingers and pulled it open. The night was still. The forest beyond her house stood quiet, wrapped in shadows. No figure waited on the doorstep. Her chest sank. Perhaps it had been nothing more than her imagination. She was about to shut the door when something caught her eye. On the ground, right at her feet. It was small, ordinary, yet out of place. She bent down, her heart racing faster with every second. Her fingers closed around it gently. Toy. Not one of her people's toys. This one was rough, simple, made from strange materials. The shape was odd, the design unfamiliar. But she knew what it was. It was human. Her hands trembled as she held it close. Her throat tightened. A child's toy left outside her door in the middle of the night? What did it mean? Who had placed it there? She clutched the toy to her chest, tears streaming down her face. A storm of emotions crashed inside her. Fear, hope, confusion. She felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting, as if her world had suddenly cracked open. And in the shadows beyond the trees, unseen by her, a pair of human eyes watched quietly. The figure stood still, silent, waiting. Inside the house, the mother returned to the cradle. She placed the toy beside it, her voice shaking as she began to sing again. But this time, the song was different, carried more than grief, carried a spark of hope. For the first time since her baby had vanished, the empty cradle didn't feel quite so empty. Morning light crept into the alien mother's home, spilling across the floor and touching the empty cradle. The toy she had found last night still lay inside it. Her fingers brushed over it again and again, as though touching it would give her answers. It was real, solid, not a dream. Someone had left it there. Someone had wanted her to find it. But who? Her heart whispered one word: human. All day her mind could not rest. She walked through the village with tired steps, her daughter's absence weighing on her shoulders as always. But now she also carried the toy, hidden beneath her shawl. She wanted to ask questions, but she feared the answers. In the marketplace, voices buzzed like insects. Whispers. Rumors. She pretended to examine fruit, but her ears strained to catch every word. They say the human walks at the edge of the forest. Dangerous creature. He steals what he likes. Did you hear? Someone saw him with a bundle in his arms, small enough to be a child. Her chest tightened. The toy grew heavier in her hands. Another voice broke in, harsh and sharp. Lies! No human would come this far. If one did, we would have driven him away already. But the first speaker shook his head. I saw his tracks. Heavy steps. Not like ours. He is here. The alien mother turned away quickly, not wanting them to notice her trembling. She clutched the hidden toy close, her heart racing. Could it be true? Could a human really be near? She returned to her home before dusk. Her neighbors watched her as she passed, their eyes cold, their lips whispering. They thought she was strange already. If they knew about the toy, they would say she was cursed for certain. Some might even try to take it from her. She could not let that happen. Inside her home, she placed the toy back into the cradle. The small object looked almost sacred lying there. Her voice trembled as she whispered, Is this your sign, little one? Are you out there? The cradle glowed faintly in the moonlight again, as if it too was waiting for an answer. That night, she could not sleep. Every sound outside made her sit up, her heart pounding. The cry of a night bird, the crack of a twig, the whisper of the wind through the tall silver trees. Each one carried the same question. Was it him? Near midnight, she heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Careful. She rose, her hands shaking, her breath caught in her chest. She moved to the door but did not open it this time. She pressed her ear against the wood. The steps stopped. Silence filled the night. And then tap. Something small dropped onto her doorstep. She gasped softly. Her hand reached for the handle, but fear held her back. What if it was a trick? What if she opened the door and found nothing but shadows waiting to swallow her whole? Her body trembled. She whispered to herself, Courage. For her. Slowly, she opened the door. The night was empty again. Trees swayed. Shadows danced. The forest stood still, hiding its secrets. But on the doorstep, another object waited. This time it was not a toy. It was cloth. Alien cloth. Her own kind's fabric, delicate and familiar, but small, woven for a baby. Her hands shook violently as she lifted it. She pressed it to her face, and her knees nearly gave way. Her daughter's scent, faint but real. Tears poured from her eyes. She clutched the cloth tight against her chest. Whoever had left this knew her child. She looked out into the trees, her voice breaking as she called, Who are you? Why are you doing this? No answer, only silence. But she was not alone. She could feel it. Someone was watching, hidden in the dark. Someone who knew the truth. She stepped outside, her bare feet touching the cool earth. The wind carried her lullaby from the night before. It was almost as if the trees remembered her song. She turned slowly, scanning the forest, desperate to see a figure. For the briefest second, she did. A shadow. A tall form standing among the trees. The shape was wrong for her people. Broad shoulders, straight posture, human. Her heart leapt into her throat. She blinked, and the figure was gone. She staggered back, her mind racing. She had seen him. She was certain. The human was real and he was near. She shut the door quickly, locking it with trembling hands. The cloth remained pressed to her chest. She collapsed beside the cradle, her body shaking from fear, from hope, from everything colliding at once. The villager's words echoed in her ears. Humans steal. Humans destroy. Humans cannot be trusted. But how could she believe that now? If this human meant to harm her, why return the cloth? Why leave the toy? Why not simply vanish without a trace? The answer was as terrifying as it was comforting. He wanted her to know. He wanted her to follow the trail. Her eyes fell on the empty cradle once more. She touched the toy, then the cloth. For the first time, her grief carried a new fire. Not just loss, but determination. If her child was still alive, she would not stop until she found her. And deep in the forest, the human stood in silence, watching the small house glow under the moons. He could hear her song faintly through the night. It reached him like a fragile thread, pulling at something inside him. He tightened his grip on the bundle he carried close to his chest, hidden from her sight. His jaw clenched. Soon, he thought. Soon she will know. Inside the house, the alien mother whispered to herself, "I will not give up." Her tears fell onto the empty cradle, but her eyes burned with new strength. The silence no longer felt hopeless, felt alive, waiting. The days passed slowly after the alien mother found the cloth. She kept it safe in the cradle along with the toy, touching both every morning as if to remind herself they were real. The villagers noticed something different in her eyes. They whispered again, saying she looked restless, almost alive with a strange fire. Some called it madness. Others said she was possessed. But she knew better. It was not madness. It was hope. Still, her hope was mixed with fear. If a human really lingered near the village, it meant danger. For generations, her people had feared humans. Stories told of battles long ago, of human ships that burned worlds. She had grown up listening to warnings. Never trust them, never follow them, never believe their promises. And yet someone, perhaps that very human, had left her the toy and the cloth. He was watching her. She could feel it in the way the nights grew heavier, in the way her heart pounded whenever she stepped outside. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and painted the sky in deep colors, she walked to the edge of her garden. The silver trees swayed gently. The forest beyond looked darker than usual, almost alive with hidden eyes. She stood still, clutching her shawl close, and whispered, "Show yourself." For a long time, nothing moved. The silence pressed down on her chest. She thought she had imagined everything. But then there, a shape, tall, broad, not like her kind. Her breath caught. The figure stood at the edge of the forest, half hidden in shadow. He did not step forward, but he did not turn away either. His presence was undeniable. Her knees grew weak. She wanted to call out, but no words came. Her lips trembled. Her heart screamed 1,000 questions. Yet she could not speak. The figure remained silent, unmoving, only watching. And then, just as suddenly, he was gone. He melted into the shadows of the trees, leaving her gasping, clutching at her chest as though she had seen a ghost. That night, she did not sing. She sat by the cradle in silence, staring at the toy and the cloth. Her thoughts twisted between terror and desperate longing. Was he dangerous? Or was he the only one who could bring her daughter back? The next morning, she tried to convince herself it had been her imagination. But when she stepped outside, she found more tracks in the soil. Heavy, wide, nothing like the soft, light steps of her people. They circled the edge of her garden, then vanished into the forest. She followed them a short distance, her heart racing with each step. The trees grew thick, shadows curling between their silver trunks. The air was damp and cool, carrying the faint smell of smoke. She froze when she saw it. Ashes on the ground, black against the earth. A fire had been lit here not long ago. Beside it lay scraps of strange material, torn cloth unlike anything her people wove. And deeper in the shadows, something else. A blanket folded carefully, as though left behind on purpose. She bent to touch it. Her breath stopped. It was small, sized for a child. Her hands trembled. Tears welled in her eyes. She lifted the blanket close, pressing her face against it. The faint scent was there again, her daughter's scent, mixed with smoke and earth. A sound broke the silence. A crack of a branch. She spun around, clutching the blanket tightly. Her eyes searched the trees. And there he was, closer this time, the human. Her chest pounded so hard she thought it might break. He stood tall, his form clear now in the dim light. His face was rough, his eyes sharp yet filled with something she could not name. His clothes were torn, patched together. His hands were dirty, but in one of them he held something close to his chest. Her heart leapt. Was it? He took one step toward her. She stumbled back, her breathing ragged. He stopped, raising one hand slowly, as if to calm her. He made no sound, but his eyes locked with hers. For a moment the world grew still. No wind, no birds, only the two of them staring across the distance, bound by something greater than fear. Then, as if sensing she was not ready, the human turned. Without a word, he disappeared again into the forest, leaving only silence behind. She collapsed to her knees, clutching the blanket, sobbing. She wanted to run after him, to scream, to demand answers. But her body was frozen between terror and hope. When she finally returned home, she placed the new blanket inside the cradle beside the toy and the cloth. 3 pieces now. 3 signs. Her people would call her foolish if they knew. They would say she was inviting disaster. But she felt it deep in her bones. This human was not here to harm her. He was leading her somewhere, guiding her, step by step, through gifts that spoke louder than words. She sat by the cradle that night, her voice shaking as she sang again. The song rose higher, stronger, carrying into the forest. Somewhere beyond the trees, the human stopped and listened, the bundle in his arms stirring softly. For the first time, she was not singing to emptiness. The cradle now held 3 things: the human toy, the tiny cloth, and the folded blanket. Each night the alien mother touched them gently, like treasures too fragile to lose. They were proof that her child was not gone forever, proof that someone knew where she was. But the signs were also torture. They gave her hope, yet no clear answers. Why wouldn't the human show himself fully? Why did he leave and vanish like a ghost? She could not bear the silence any longer. One night, as the moons painted the silver trees in pale light, she sat beside the cradle, staring at the gifts. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Why do you hide from me? If you have her, if she is alive, bring her to me. Please." Her words broke into sobs. She pressed her forehead against the edge of the cradle, her tears dripping onto the wood. The loneliness was unbearable. She was no longer content to wait. The next morning, she made her choice. She wrapped herself in a dark shawl, slipped food and water into a small satchel, and stepped out into the forest. She would follow the tracks. She would find the human. She would find her child. The villagers watched her leave. Some shook their heads. "She is chasing ghosts," they muttered. "She is lost to grief." But no one stopped her. No one cared enough. The forest swallowed her quickly. The trees loomed tall and endless, their branches whispering like voices in the wind. She followed the heavy footprints pressed deep into the soil, so different from her people's light steps. Each one led her deeper, further from safety. Hours passed. The air grew colder, darker. Strange noises echoed in the distance. Rustles, cracks, cries of animals she did not know. Her hands shook, but she pressed on, clutching the satchel tightly. The image of her child's face pushed her forward. At last she found it. A campsite. Ashes lay scattered, the faint smell of smoke still clinging to the air. A fire had burned here not long ago. Blankets were spread across the ground, and footprints circled the area. She crouched low, her eyes searching every detail. Then she saw it. A small bundle of fabric, carefully wrapped, lying near the fire pit. Her breath caught in her throat. She moved closer, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. With trembling hands, she reached for the cloth. But before her fingers could touch it, a shadow fell across her. She froze. Slowly, she lifted her head. The human stood before her. This time, there was no distance, no tree hiding his form. He was tall, broader than her kind, his clothes torn and patched from long travel. His face was marked with exhaustion, yet his eyes burned with an intensity she could not understand. And in his arms he held something close, wrapped tightly. Her chest felt like it would burst. She stumbled back, fear and hope clashing violently inside her. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why are you here?" The human did not answer. He only tightened his hold on the bundle in his arms. His eyes softened as he looked at her, but he did not move closer. Her knees gave way. She fell to the ground, clutching the fabric she had almost touched. Tears streamed down her face. Is it her? Is my baby alive?" The human's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, he knelt slowly, placing the bundle on the ground between them. Her hands shook as she reached forward, desperate to see, desperate to know. But before she could unwrap it, the human raised his hand gently, stopping her. His gaze told her to wait. Her breath caught. The air around them felt heavy, charged with something greater than fear. For a long moment, they only stared at each other, two strangers bound by a secret neither fully spoke. Finally, the human whispered something in his own tongue, low and rough, words she could not understand. But his voice carried no threat. It carried sorrow and something else, protection. She did not understand his language, but her heart understood his intent. Her fingers brushed the edge of the bundle, her body trembling. The human slowly stood, his eyes never leaving hers. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back into the forest, his figure swallowed by the shadows. She was left kneeling on the ground, clutching the fabric and staring at the bundle he had left. Her tears would not stop. She wanted to run after him, demand answers, scream for him to stay. But her body was too weak, her mind too full of questions. Was this truly her child? Or another sign meant to torment her? Why did the human not stay? Why did he give her hope only to disappear again? She pressed her forehead to the earth, sobbing. Yet deep inside a spark grew. She had seen him up close. He was real. He had not harmed her. And the bundle, whatever it was, meant he carried the truth. When she finally rose, she held the fabric close to her chest and whispered to the silent trees, "I will not stop. If you are leading me, I will follow. If you are testing me, I will endure. Just bring me to her." The wind carried her words away. In the distance, hidden beyond the trees, the human stood still, watching her from the shadows, the faint cry of a child stirring softly in his arms. The breaking point had come. The alien mother carried the bundle back to her home with trembling arms. Her steps were unsteady, her eyes wide with fear and hope. She placed it gently inside the cradle, where the toy, the cloth, and the blanket already waited. For a long moment she just stood there, unable to breathe. Her hands shook as she began to unwrap the bundle. Each fold of fabric made her heart race faster, until at last, she saw a small face. Her breath caught. It was her daughter. Tiny features, delicate skin, soft breathing that rose and fell. Her child was alive. Alive. Tears burst from her eyes as she reached out, her fingers brushing the baby's cheek. The warmth was real. The breath was real. The little one stirred and made a small sound, and the mother's cry filled the room. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing, pressing her forehead against the cradle. For so long she had sung to emptiness, clung to hope when everyone told her to let go. And now here she was, her child safe and alive. But joy came with fear. Who had taken her daughter? How had she been found? Why had the human brought her back in silence, leaving without answers? She wept as she held her baby close, rocking her gently, whispering lullabies through tears. The weight of months of grief melted, replaced by fierce love. But in the back of her mind, the questions burned hotter. By morning, the village had noticed. Neighbors whispered when they saw her stepping outside with the child in her arms. Some were shocked, some angry. The council summoned her immediately. Inside the council chamber, she stood tall though her body trembled. The elders stared at the child, their eyes narrow. "This is not possible," one of them said coldly. "The child was lost. No one returns from the void." "She is alive," the mother answered, her voice strong even as her hands clutched the baby tightly. "And she was brought back to me." "By whom?" another elder demanded. She hesitated. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "A human." The chamber erupted with gasps and angry voices. The elders banged their staffs, silencing the room. One of them leaned forward, his face dark with suspicion. "You lie. No human would return what they take. They destroy. They kill. Why would one save a child?" The mother's voice rose. "I saw him with my own eyes. He left her for me. He gave me back my life." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Some muttered that it was dangerous. Others whispered that perhaps it was a trick. The word trap spread through the chamber like fire. But the mother stood her ground. "You can call me foolish. You can call me cursed. But this child is mine. She is alive because of him." For a long moment, the council sat in silence. Then one elder said quietly, "If what you speak is true, the human must be watched. He cannot be trusted." Her heart ached at their words. She wanted to defend him, but she realized she did not know his reasons either. He had not spoken to her. He had vanished into the forest, leaving only her daughter in the cradle. Was he a savior? Or did he carry secrets even darker than the elders feared? That night, back in her home, she rocked her baby gently. The child's tiny hands reached up, clutching her mother's finger. Tears blurred the mother's eyes as she whispered, "You are my light. You are my song. I will never lose you again." But her gaze drifted to the window, to the dark forest beyond. She knew he was out there. She could feel it, those unseen eyes watching. The human had risked himself to return the child. But why? The answer came sooner than she expected. Near midnight, as she sang softly to her daughter, the door creaked. She froze. Slowly, she turned. A tall shadow filled the doorway. The human. Her body tensed, but she did not scream. She clutched her child protectively, her eyes locked on him. He raised both hands, palms open, showing he meant no harm. His face was tired, his eyes heavy, yet there was a quiet fire in them. He stepped forward slowly, his voice rough and low. She could not understand the words, but his tone was steady, almost pleading. She shook her head. "I don't understand you." He paused, then placed his hand on his chest. He spoke again, slower. Though she could not understand the language, she felt the weight of his meaning. He had risked everything. He had saved her child. Her voice cracked. "Why? Why would you do this for me?" The human looked at her, and for the first time, she saw sorrow in his eyes. He knelt, lowering himself until his gaze was level with hers. His hand trembled as he pointed to the baby, then back to himself, then finally pressed his hand over his heart. She gasped softly, her tears falling once more. She understood. He had lost someone too. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with grief, with gratitude, with something larger than words. The alien mother tightened her hold on her daughter, her eyes burning with both pain and wonder. She whispered, almost to herself, "You are not my enemy." The human lowered his head. For the first time, he allowed himself to breathe. In that quiet room, the truth began to unfold. Not with words, but with shared loss, shared love, and the fragile thread of hope binding them together. The alien mother could not sleep that night. Her daughter rested peacefully in the cradle, her tiny breath steady and warm, but the human's face lingered in her mind. The way his eyes carried both pain and sorrow, the way he had placed his hand on his heart, silently telling her more than words ever could. By morning, the whispers in the village had grown louder. Everyone had seen the child in her arms, alive when they had all believed she was gone forever. Some said it was a blessing. Others said it was a curse. Fear spread quickly, sharper than fire. That day, the elders summoned the human. He appeared before the council at dawn. His tall figure stood out among the villagers, his presence heavy and strange. Guards kept their weapons ready, though his hands were empty and lifted in peace. The alien mother stood nearby, holding her daughter close. The elders questioned him, their voices stern and full of suspicion. "Why are you here? Why return what you could have taken?" The human did not speak at first. He lowered his head, searching for words in a language not his own. Finally, he pulled something from his satchel, a small device cracked and worn. He touched it, and a faint projection flickered in the air. Images. The villagers gasped. The projection showed cages. Small cages. Inside them were children. Alien children, frightened and crying. The human pointed at the images, then at the baby in the cradle. His voice broke as he spoke in his rough tongue, but his meaning was clear. The children had been stolen. Her daughter had been stolen. The villagers murmured in shock. Some covered their mouths. Others turned away, unable to watch. The elders' faces darkened, but not with disbelief, with shame. They had told the mother to forget, to let go, when in truth the child had been taken by cruel hands. The human's voice grew louder, his words falling heavy even if most could not understand. But the images said enough. He had found the place where the children were kept. He had risked his life to free them. And though he could not save them all, he had carried this one, her daughter, back to where she belonged. The alien mother's tears flowed freely. She stepped forward, her voice breaking as she cried, "You saved her. You saved my child." The human lowered his head, almost as if he could not bear the gratitude. He pointed to himself again, then pressed his hand to his chest, the same gesture he had given her before. She understood now. He had lost his own child to the same cruelty. Her breath caught. Suddenly, everything made sense. The sorrow in his eyes, the care with which he had carried the baby, the reason he had left signs at her door instead of speaking outright. He knew her pain because he had lived it. He gave back what he himself had once lost. But the elders were not ready to see him as a savior. One of them struck his staff against the ground, his voice hard. "Humans bring danger. If what he says is true, others will come. This is not the act of kindness you believe. It is a warning. More will follow." The villagers shifted uneasily. Fear was stronger than gratitude. Some nodded at the elder's words. Some whispered about banishment, about protecting themselves before it was too late. The mother stepped forward, her daughter still in her arms. Her voice rang clear through the chamber. "You call him danger, but he has done what none of you would. He walked into the fire, into cages, into death itself, and brought life back to me. You told me to forget, to move on, but he refused to let my child disappear. If danger follows him, then let it follow me as well. I will not turn away from the one who gave me back my heart." The chamber fell into silence. The human stood still, his eyes lowered, but a faint tremor passed through his shoulders. He had not expected her to defend him. The eldest of the council leaned forward, his voice tired. "Perhaps the human speaks truth, but truth does not erase fear. He cannot stay here. Our people will not accept it." Her chest tightened, but she knew the words were final. The human seemed to understand as well. He gave no protest. Instead, he looked at the child one last time. His eyes softened, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. He simply nodded once, heavy with meaning, and turned to leave. The mother wanted to run after him, to beg him to stay, but her daughter stirred in her arms. She looked down at the tiny face and then back toward the doorway where the human had disappeared. That night, as she rocked her child to sleep, she whispered softly, "You are here because of him. You live because he chose to fight when no one else did. Never forget that, my little one." And though the human was gone, she knew his presence lingered in the forest, in the silence, in the song that carried from her lips. He had shared his truth, and in that truth, she had found not only her daughter but something more. Proof that even across worlds, sorrow and love could bind two souls together. The forest was quiet again. The human had left, disappearing into the shadows like a ghost. Yet his absence did not feel empty. It felt heavy, like a silence that carried unspoken words. The alien mother sat by the cradle, her baby safe in her arms, but her heart refused to rest. The council's decision echoed in her mind. He cannot stay here. He is danger. He must go. But she knew the truth now. Without him, her child would never have come back. Without his courage, she would still be singing to emptiness. He was more than a stranger. He was the thread that tied her sorrow to her hope. Days passed, but she could not shake the thought of him. At night, she still felt his eyes in the forest, watching silently, protecting from a distance. Sometimes she stepped outside with her daughter, singing softly, wondering if he was listening. The silver trees carried her voice through the night. Somewhere, far off, she thought she heard the faint echo of footsteps stopping to listen. But she also knew danger was close. If he had stolen her child from those who trafficked the young, then surely those enemies would not stop. They would come searching. Perhaps not tonight, perhaps not tomorrow, but one day. The human had warned them not with words, but with his very presence. The danger was real. One evening, the sky darkened with storm clouds. She rocked her child, humming gently, when a sudden knock shook her door. Fear jolted through her chest. She rushed to open it and found him there, the human. He was soaked from the rain, his clothes torn, his eyes tired, but his face was urgent. He pointed toward the forest, his voice rough and sharp with words she could not understand. Still, she felt the warning in his tone. Trouble was near. Her hands tightened around the baby. "What is it?" she whispered, though she knew he could not answer in her tongue. His gaze fell on the child, then on her, then back toward the trees. His meaning was clear. They are coming. Her chest ached. She wanted to beg him to stay, to fight, to protect them all. But she also saw the weight in his eyes, the burden he carried. He could not remain here. The council would never allow it. The villagers would never trust him. And worse, the enemies who had stolen children once might track him here, bringing death to the entire village. He stepped closer, his voice low now, softer. He placed his hand gently on the cradle, then pressed that same hand to his heart. His eyes held hers, heavy with meaning. She understood he would keep fighting, but he could not fight here. Her tears burned as she whispered, "You gave me back my life. How can I let you walk away?" The human did not reply. He only lowered his head. For him, there was no choice. He had lost before, and he would not allow others to suffer the same. His path was pain, sacrifice, and endless wandering, but it was his to walk. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his arm. The strength beneath her fingers was real, but so was the sorrow. "Then take this with you," she said softly. She placed her daughter's toy, the one he had first left at her doorstep, back into his hand. "A piece of her, so you never forget what you gave back." The human stared at the toy, his jaw tightening. For a moment, his mask of silence cracked. His eyes glistened, though no tears fell. He nodded once, a deep, heavy gesture that carried more than words. He turned to go, but paused at the doorway. He looked back, his gaze lingering on the cradle where the baby now slept peacefully. His lips moved, forming words she could not understand, but the tone reached her heart like music. A blessing, farewell. And then he was gone, swallowed by the storm. The mother stood in the doorway long after, her tears mixing with the rain. She held her child close, whispering softly, "One day, I will tell you this story. I will tell you about the human who risked everything, who carried you through the darkness, who gave me back my song. And you will know that hope can come from the most unexpected place. The storm raged outside, but inside, the cradle glowed with warmth again. The lullaby she sang carried further that night, reaching beyond the village, beyond the trees, into the silence where the human walked alone. He heard it, and for the first time in many years he allowed himself to smile. The final choice had been made. He would carry her song with him, just as she would carry his sacrifice forever.